visually, like connecting some dots or whatever.
I'd like to introduce myself. I am Heather Mabee. I am the District 4 Director for New York State, and I am also a member of the Saratoga Chapter, and I'm going to be your Master of Ceremonies for today. So I'd like to start out with introducing the Vice Regent of our Saratoga Chapter, who will be our acting chaplain today, Diane Russell.
We offer thanks for the dedicated devotion of the founders of our society, whose vision and determination brought forth this organization, which has been a positive and productive force for God, home, and country. We ask your blessing upon our National Society and your grace that we may continue the legacy of our founders in the spirit of love and unity for the good of our nation and the world. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam President General, would you lead us in the American Creed, please? Certainly.
Please join me in the American's Creed, the copy of which you will find within your program today. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy and a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union of equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
And don't go too far. I would just like to introduce, I think, one of the most wonderful President Generals, the D.A.R. She has gotten us through an amazing time of COVID when it was so difficult for all of us, but still has continued the rah-rah and rising up and shining for D.A.R. And it is my extreme pleasure to introduce our President General, Denise Doren VanBuren.
Thank you, Heather, for that warm introduction. We believe that I am the first seated President General to ever have visited or spoken here, and so I'm really, truly honored to have an opportunity to address you today. And it's too bad that we didn't get a nicer day, isn't it? So, let me begin by thanking the Walworth Museum, the City of Saratoga Springs, and of course the Saratoga Chapter for keeping alive the memory of a woman named Hardin Walworth. In fact, an extraordinary woman whose enduring legacy is an inspiring example of courage, of resilience, and of patriotism in any age. While many of you are far more familiar with her life here in Saratoga Springs than I shall ever be, it is an honor for me as the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution President General to discuss with you some of the foundational impact that Ellen had on our national society. We are the world's largest patriotic women's organization, and we're very pleased to be a participant and a supporter of this new exhibit by extending some financial support to its creation. As you likely well know, Mrs. Walworth's life beyond our society is one that deserves its own Hollywood movie, is it not? And if you have not ever read any of the accounts of her life, I encourage you to do so. One that I recommend in particular is Fall of the House of Walworth by Jeffrey O'Brien. It's available on Amazon. Her story is a study in overcoming adversity, of triumphing over tragedy to live a purpose-driven life no matter how difficult the obstacles placed before you. Our National Society's founding is truly just one chapter of an astoundingly fascinating life she led. She was a prolific author who wrote on patriotic and historic subjects, including a visitor's guide here to beautiful Saratoga. One of her earliest public efforts was a plea to her neighbors here to contribute funds to renovate George Washington's home at Mount Vernon. She was an authority, as you know, on the battlefields of Saratoga and also published an account of the Burgoyne campaign. She devoted much of her energy and attention to the completion of the Saratoga Monument. You all likely well know how she came to live in Saratoga as a young woman and the many good work she completed here, particularly the school that she operated on Broadway for 15 years. The cold New York winters did ultimately entice her to make her home year-round in Washington, D.C. On July the 13th of 1890, after the Sons of the American Revolution had allowed women to join their group, a woman named Mary Smith Lockwood published the story of a female patriot, a woman named Hannah Arnett, in the Washington Post. And she asked at the end of this account, where will the sons and the daughters of the American Revolution place Hannah Arnett? She was seeking to create a place for patriotic women to honor their Revolutionary War patriots. Less than a month later, Mrs. Walworth's home in the Langham Hotel in Washington, D.C. became that place. When the basic scope of what would 2 months later become the National Society of the D.A.R. was first outlined, Mrs. Walworth welcomed 2 other women into her home, Mary Deshay and Eugenia Washington, on that evening, August the 9th, 1890. As the Smithsonian Report of 1890 to 97 states, the first step they took that night was to declare that the scope of our society would be national, and also that the name of Mrs. Benjamin Harrison, the First Lady at the time, was proposed as our very first President General. The following day, a membership application and a request to accept this post, the highest office in our national society, was sent to First Lady Harrison at the White House. Incidentally, it was later Ellen's suggestion that our society commission a portrait of Caroline Scott Harrison as a gift to the White House. It still hangs there, and we are fortunate enough to have a replica of that painting, which hangs in the President General's reception room at our national headquarters. So Ellen Walworth, Miss Deshay, and Miss Washington next began writing letters, issuing invitations to other influential women to come and accept appointments to our Charter National Board of Management. Mary Lockwood, who had written that initial letter to the newspaper, agreed to offer her residence as the official first meeting on October the 11th, 1890. And that's where the formal organization of D.A.R. occurs, and these 4 women together are considered our 4 founders. The objectives that they laid forth in that October meeting have remained the same to this day, 131 years later. Historical, to perpetuate the memory and the spirit of the men and the women who achieved American independence. Educational, to carry out the injunction of Washington in his farewell address to the American people, to promote as an object of primary importance institutions for the general diffusion of knowledge, thus developing an enlightened public opinion. And 3, patriotic, to cherish, to maintain, and extend the institutions of American freedom, to foster true patriotism and love of country, and to aid in securing for mankind all the blessings of liberty. Mrs. Walworth was assigned National Number 5 when she became a member of the Saratoga chapter. She immediately served our National Society as our first corresponding Secretary General and was later elected an honorary Vice President General, a title that she would hold until her death. She was the first editor of our Society's official periodical, American Monthly Magazine. She served from 1892 to 1894. It was an honor for me to have that same title from 2004 to 2019 when I was elected our Society's highest position, President General. I had to give up the editorship. So for 15 years, I was the editor of the publication that she had begun more than a century earlier. A woman named Janet Richards, who was a charter member of the D.A.R., was acquainted with all 4 of our Society's founders, and she remembered sitting next to Mrs. Walworth during one of the early meetings. She later related that she was impressed, quote, with Mrs. Walworth's wise suggestions and authoritative manner, also by her tall and stately figure when she rose to speak. Though she was involved in many other organizations and causes over the years, for example, she spoke at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, and at that time she became the first person in the United States to urge that we create a national archives. Ellen Hardin Walworth was involved in virtually every decision of our National Society during its first 25 years of existence. She suggested, for example, our original motto, Amor Patriae, which means love of country. It was accepted, but it only lasted for a couple of meetings when it was changed to home and country. As Director General of the Women's National War Relief Association in 1898 during the Spanish-American War, Mrs. Walworth was involved in our National Society's decision to create what would become today's Army Nurse Corps. One of our members, Dr. Anita Newcomb McGee, founded the Corps, recruited our members to be the very first Army nurses. Ellen herself took part at the field hospital at Fortress Monroe in Hampton, Virginia, to meet the men who were being brought home wounded from Santiago. Her duties there included distributing supplies and managing the nursing staff. But her daughter, Rabina, who was a Vassar College student and also a DAR member, also volunteered to be a nurse. Tragically, she fell ill and died while nursing these men coming home from the Spanish-American War at the end of Long Island, Montauk Point. Mrs. Walworth never recovered from Rabina's death and remained in black mourning clothes for the remaining decades of her life. And DAR members from across the country contributed to a massive monument that is here in Saratoga Springs that honors Rabina's tragic death and the Walworth's family sacrifice. Ellen herself died at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington on June the 23rd, 1915, of an obstruction caused by gallstones. She's buried right here in Saratoga in Green Ridge Cemetery. A memorial service was held in her honor at our society's annual Continental Congress in 1916 in Memorial Continental Hall, and the New York Daughters have continued to visit her grave regularly to revisit her legacy in the intervening decades. In 1927, the District of Columbia DAR placed a memorial tablet outside of the Langham Hotel. That's the location of Mrs. Walworth's home, where she hosted that very first meeting for the genesis of our National Society. That, of course, was to commemorate the location of the founding of our society, but unfortunately that plaque and the hotel have since been demolished. While it saddens me to think that there is no permanent public marker noting her involvement in our formation, I do invite you to visit our national headquarters when next you are in Washington, D.C. There you will see a lovely portrait of Ellen Hardin Walworth that hangs above our beautiful DAR library. You will also find on the first floor a framed copy of her original DAR application. And of course, you will hopefully visit our beautiful Founders Memorial to the 4 women who created our National Society. It was designed by Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney and designed and stands on our grounds. It's honored each year at the closing of our annual Continental Congress. About 4,000 women will come to it. Each year we close that ceremony by placing a wreath in honor of the 4 founders. We also distribute something that are called Founders Medals, including the Ellen Hardin Walworth Medal for Patriotism, which honors an adult who has displayed outstanding patriotism in the promotion of our American ideals of God, home, and country through faithful and meritorious service to community, state, or nation. Jamie and everyone here at the Walworth Museum, on behalf of the nearly 190,000 members of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, I express sincere gratitude for this wonderful exhibit, which salutes one of our society's 4 founders, in order that future generations will know of her vast contributions to our American story. So please allow me to conclude as I began. Thank you to the Walworth Museum, the City of Saratoga Springs, and the Saratoga Chapter for keeping alive the memory of Ellen Hardin Walworth, an extraordinary woman whose enduring legacy is an inspiring example to all of us still today of courage, of resilience, and of patriotism for any age. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President General. I'd now like to introduce our wonderful New York State Regent, Patrice Polly Woerner, and she has been making a splash across New York, having all of us New York daughters working on challenges to get us back into the mode of thinking about DAR and getting our chapters vibrant and going strong again. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Mabee. On behalf of the New York State organization, it is an honor to attend the opening of the Ellen Hardin Walworth exhibit and recognize the life of this and the work of this woman of vision and purpose. Sincere appreciation is extended to the Saratoga Springs History Museum for preserving the history of the Walworth family and making it accessible to the public through the exhibit rooms. The New York Daughters are pleased to join the National Society and the Saratoga Chapter in financially supporting the museum's effort to honor Mrs. Walworth, her role in the founding and early work of our organization, and her life of service. Thank you so much for this opportunity to participate today.
And then it's my privilege to introduce another good friend of mine, Senator Daphne Jordan, who is such a champion for our district here. And we are so appreciative that she's taken time out of her extremely busy schedule and is part of this wonderful ceremony. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Senator Daphne Jordan, serving and representing District Number 43 in New York, and I am a proud Saratoga County resident, and my district does encompass the eastern half of Saratoga County. It's wonderful being here at the Saratoga Springs History Museum for the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution District 4's unveiling of the Ellen Hardin Walworth exhibit. I just want to say what we all know, that the Saratoga Springs History Museum is a very special place. It's a historic and cultural treasure that we have here. It's an honor to be a part of this special event, recognizing, honoring, and celebrating a true American patriot, pioneer, and trailblazer, Ellen Hardin Walworth. After her father's death, Ellen's mother married the Honorable Reuben Hyde Walworth, the last Chancellor of New York, and a Revolutionary War descendant, then relocated her family right here in Saratoga Springs. And while living in Saratoga Springs, her stepfather brought Ellen to the Saratoga battlefield, where her great-grandfather, Lieutenant John Hardin, served under Colonel Daniel Morgan. This visit had a profound impact on her. It was her first opportunity to walk where her great-grandfather had fought, and she called it a marked event in my young life. Ellen Walworth ultimately became a prolific writer on patriotic and historic subjects, emerging as an authority on the battlefields of Saratoga and publishing an account of the Burgoyne campaign. She also served as the only woman trustee on the Saratoga Battlefield Monument Commission, where she was responsible for outlining a plan to mark the points of interest in the battlefield. History, American history, mattered to Ellen Hardin Walworth. She understood the special, unique place, power, and purpose of American history, and that it was worth recording, celebrating, and cherishing. We should look to the positive example of Ellen Walworth and recommit our civic institutions, our schools, and ourselves to respecting, preserving, and protecting American history. America, the America we love, isn't about erasing history. It's not about tearing down monuments, demonizing, or diminishing our founding fathers and founding mothers. In America, we should learn from our shared proud history, the good and the bad, so we can grow and move forward and still look back with patriotism and pride. American history is an indelible part of our ongoing work toward forming that perfect union that our founding fathers aspired to. Ours is a shared history, one of triumphs and tests, of obstacles overcoming, and mountains yet to climb. It's aspirational, exceptional, and uniquely American. Yes, we're fortunate, blessed, and proud to be Americans. Ellen Hardin Walworth was too. My thanks to the Saratoga Springs History Museum for dedicating a room celebrating this amazing woman and all of her accomplishments. And my special thanks to the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, the New York State Daughters of the American Revolution, and the Saratoga chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, all of which generously donated $7,000 to create this new exhibit that celebrates and venerates our proud, shared American history. I have brought with me a Senate proclamation to present to Heather Mabee. Okay, well, I was doing it for the local exhibit, but I can present it to both of you, which would be an honor for me. Oh, sure. Thank you. And so this will commemorate the day today and be a part of the history.
Now it is my very pleasure to introduce another good friend of mine, Assemblywoman Carrie Warner, who has deep roots in the history and the preservation of many things that have happened in Saratoga County. So it's truly a pleasure to have her here and to be saying a few words for us.
Thank you all. It is truly a pleasure to be with you today. Some of you have heard me say before that on my family tree, I have ancestors who fought in the Battle of Saratoga, one for the British and two for the Americans, so I was covered either way. But I have to say I'm very pleased with the outcome. You mentioned earlier wanting to make the New York chapters of the D.A.R. more vibrant, and I would have to say that my experience of our Saratoga chapter is that this is a truly vibrant and engaged group of women who have made a difference in our community over many decades, from the work that they do every year, being involved in patriotic events like the Flag Parade or this past Sunday's Turning Point Parade in Schuylerville, to the monument that's placed in the Gideon Putnam Cemetery. This is an organization that is deeply involved in the civic life of our community, and you have my thanks for the great work that you do throughout the years and for the work that you did to raise the money to make this exhibit possible. Thank you so very much. Saratoga Springs is a community that the history of women's contributions to Saratoga Springs development is often not heralded and celebrated very greatly. And I sort of think of it as a bit of hidden history. I suppose some of you may know that our hospital was actually founded by 7 women. Of course, we don't actually know their first names because they signed the deed, Mrs. So-and-so. But nonetheless, it is contributions of women throughout the history of Saratoga Springs that have made the difference. And to be here today to honor one of our early Saratoga Springs residents, Ellen Hardin Walworth, is really a pleasure, because not only is this going to be a great exhibit, but it will begin to highlight, I think, a piece of that hidden history that we need to highlight even more, the role that women have played in the development of our community. So thank you so much for the great work that you have done, for all of the good things that you will do in the future, and for celebrating this piece of both American and Saratoga Springs history. Thank you.